Now listen to the protocol here. فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever drinks from the river, they're not one of mine. Talut is saying, whoever drinks from the river, you're not one of mine. You're not one of us. You failed. You failed the leader. The leader gave a prescription. You didn't listen. If you drink from the river, you're not one of us. Many of them drank from the river. And they weren't part of the army anymore. They didn't cross the river. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي إِلَّا مَنْ اغْتَرَفَ غُرْفَةً بِيَدِهِ. But whoever doesn't drink from the river, doesn't consume from the river, they are one of us. They are one of us. Excluding, however, those who take a palm, a handful of water. Even they have to be excluded. So look, they encountered a river. This was a piece of history. We don't deny the historical context and the historical narrative. We just say, in addition to the piece of history, that history, the batin, the esoteric inner meanings of it, is still existing moment to moment now. It's just that this batini meaning manifested once upon a time like that, but right now it's manifesting today in another way, tomorrow in another way, but it's manifesting moment to moment. Don't drink from the river. Many people did. They didn't cross the river. They wanted to fight Goliath, the forces of evil. Some people drank a handful only. Some people didn't drink anything. They crossed the river. Those who drank a handful, they too said, we don't have any strength left. Leaving those who drank nothing from the river. They were 313, the traditions say. I mean, when you see one or two traditions, you can't say this is history substantiated. You need much more than one or two traditions. But what we can say, if there weren't 313, we understand that a very minority out of that 80,000, because history is not substantiated with one or two hadith. If you have numerous hadith saying the same thing in history, then we accept it. But otherwise, history, there are many different versions of it. People are speaking. For something to be substantiated is very difficult, especially numbers. But out of 80,000, a very small group succeeded. Actually, how did they succeed? فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So they drank from it, except a very small number who did not drink at all. إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ فَلَمَّا جَاوَزَهُ هُوَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ قَالُوا. And when Talut, Saul, passed with his troops over and crossed, some of them said, لا طاقة لنا اليوم بجالوت وجنوده. Some of them, those who drank a handful of water, they said, we have no strength against Goliath and the army of Goliath. Because they drank, but they drank only a handful. That was enough. However, the verse ends, قَالَ الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو اللَّهِ. But those who had yaqeen, they will meet Allah, and had drank nothing from the water, as Talut had prescribed, they say, كَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرًا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How many times a small group, a small hizb, dominates over a larger group. بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. And Allah is with the patient ones. If you remember, who were the patient ones in chapter 2, verse 155 or 156? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Who were they? الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. That Tawheed. Okay, that was a piece of history, no problem. It's happening today, we accept it, but what is the meaning? And what are we being tested with? And what is the leader of today telling us not to drink from? Even a handful of water, be careful, otherwise you're not one of mine. What is the river here? Inna dunya bahrun faqad ghariqa fiha jaylun kathir. This dunya, the worldly life, it's an ocean. And drowned in it are waves and waves of people. Ma hadhihi al-hayatu dunya illa lahwun wa la'ib. As long as you're drowned even with a handful of water, spare me the defense of walaya. You're not a true follower of walaya. But those who give their lives are ready to die for walaya. That's because the ego has been eliminated. They're ready to die for walaya. To die, the I has to go. Otherwise that self-love won't allow you to do things. Whoever drinks from the dunya, they're not one of mine. But those who don't consume from it, they're one of us. That's important. They're one of us. This is a code. You can evaluate yourself. Now, don't be pessimistic that we're still drowned in the dunya, me and you, both of us together. I mean, we're not true defenders anyway. But at least let's make a rational endeavor and start the process. And this entails something very important, that once it's established who your leader is, you follow them, irrespective. Because you know that the ego keeps on bringing these questions, these temptations come one's way. It's very difficult. They keep on questioning things. They see things around them, they question it. But you follow the leader, irrespective. If you have that much of faith, that may help you. Otherwise you have to really free yourself, cleanse yourself from concealed shirk, to see the truth. And then be of such value to Allah's army. Okay, I think I'll stop there with your question. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Yes, yes.
And not to fall into the trap.
Yes. You see, when you want to travel towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you need a house. You need some kind of security. Now, either whether you buy it or rent it or whatever, but you need a house. It provides a kind of security for you. And under that security, for example, you start traveling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you need, so then you say, you mentally construct of this idea of ownership. Ownership doesn't exist in the physical world. We have a house, a plot of land, and a person. But you can't point to anything and say, this is ownership. Ownership is in the mind. But we mentally construct this idea of ownership so that when I'm in my house, I'm living with security and no one's going to take this away from me because it's my house. So we wanted ownership and we mentally constructed it to be in peace. And then, for example, we marry. Marriage is also a mental construct. We don't have marriage in the external realm. We have a man and a woman and children. Marriage is a mental construct. And this is made so that no one can take your spouse, for example, from you. and then in peace again. Jobs, it's a mental construct. And so that here you have a regular income, for example, and you can live in peace, and so on and so forth. These are all mental constructs. They don't exist in the physical realm. And the reason they were constructed was so that we be in peace, and now we can spiritually wayfare towards Allah. What happens in the process is that the house becomes the goal now. The goal was reaching Allah in peace. And the house was only for constructed ownership. It was a mental thing. There's no reality to it. We constructed it mentally, and it has effects in the physical realm, but the effects was so no one can take our land. We just wanted to be in peace. All of a sudden we see that this plot of land or house has become the goal, and you're thinking of a better house and a better house and a better house. What have you become disattentive to? That journeying towards Allah. It's been compromised by what started as a mental construct. The word for mental constructs in the Quran is dunya, hayatul dunya. It's referring to that. It's just a dhahir here. And then the spouse, children, all these becomes symbols of glory for you. My wife, my husband, my children. I have this many children, this many children. My job. When all these were just for you to have a security, so there are no hindrances when reaching Allah. Because if someone's going to take your land, your wife, your children, your this, you're always going to be perturbed, agitated. In a state of agitation, mental instability, you can't really wayfare towards Allah. It's difficult. So these things, suddenly, what are mental constructs, these become the goal. That's when we have to cleanse ourselves. The dunya is nothing but lah and la'ib, and through the stages we went. It's a process. Yes.
Sheikh, I have a follow-up question.
Sure, yes.
On this. Since we have been young, these mental constraints have always been the goals that have been pushed.
Yes.
Go to a better school, get a job, get married. Once you're married, now get children. These have always been emphasized, and not just in one household, at the community at large. So at this point in time, how do we take a step back and move towards
Yes.
the right direction? That is what we need, that push towards.
Yes, yes. And I think it was you that was mentioning that 5-year plan. Or not 5 years, but a plan. We need a plan now to do. First of all, yes, well done for even being ready to enter such a plan. Many people aren't ready. And not that they're not ready. When you get drowned in the dunya, you can't really come out of it. And even deen can be sensationalized to such a degree. But it's all dunya, even deen. Even activities of deen. Imam Baqir alayhi salam has given a very good commentary on one of the verses of the Holy Quran. I need the Quran in front of me, it's difficult to find. But he gives a Batini commentary to one of the verses of the Holy Quran. Where deen can be sensationalized. Where when you're absorbed in the dunya, when you want to do a deeni religious activity, that's going to get the color of the dunya to it. It's very difficult. And especially for scholars. Especially for scholars. So yes, we have to make a plan. And you have to work with a small community and then work together under the auspices of true education. Although no one is saying the big house, the big car, all these are bad. As long as has to be not lost. The thing is, usually with the big car for the sake of a big car, the big house for the sake of a big house. Actually, in traditions, having a big house is a sign of barakah from Allah. a sign of tawfiq from Allah. A big plot of land is okay, but the glitter of the dunya, you see, the tajammulat, the luxury things, was that necessary? Having a big house, yes, but a luxurious house? And you know, it's to such a degree that even scholars who live in luxury, it can affect their aqaid, let alone those who are not scholars. There's one verse in the Holy Quran which Yes, what's the verse where it says, the second part of the verse is, Man ittakhadha ilahahu hawa, who takes the hawa, the love of the worldly life, the whims of the dunya, takes the whims of the dunya as their Lord. What's the beginning? Falah? Yes, I can't remember. Yes. Sorry about that. Falah something, man ittakhadha, don't you? Falah ra'ayta, yes. Falah ra'ayta man ittakhadha ilahahu hawa. Don't you see those who take their Lord as the whims, the dunya, they take that as their Lord. They're drowned in the worldly life. And it's so deep that it affects their tawheed. It affects their aqaid. If tawheed is compromised, the whole of aqaid will be compromised. Then they may come out with statements in aqaid which sound very bizarre. But it's a process, it happens. It can easily happen to any scholar. You have to have a plan. This plan has to be based on education. But the thing is, don't think about numbers. Don't think you have to be a big group. Don't be, you give the invitation. People will join you in your community. They may not join you. But those who want to join you, they join you wholeheartedly. They really want to make a change. How many a small group predominates over fi'atin kathira. So yes, here we have to work with true sincerity. You have to be educated, and then once you're educated, at the same time you make a plan, a practical plan. Camps aren't for education, really, theoretical knowledge. Camps are for practical, how to implement the knowledge you've learned. If you come to camps, but camps are things you can learn if everyone is in their own house online, for example, or every week you have a lecture given. But when you come to camps, everyone comes together in person. You have to now devise plans, for example. That's one humble suggestion I have, maybe for future plans. If you have future camps, make it more practical in nature. So when everyone goes back, they have something practical to do. But it has to start with knowledge. It's the scaffolding. Any practicality has to emanate from that knowledge. And you learn universal principles, and then from that you devise a plan and you go forward. Okay, wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala